Russian rhythmic gymnast Evgenia Kanaeva's story, this interview, how she came into rhythmic gymnastics, what her journey really looked like leading up to the first Olympics and then to the second Olympics, and then about her retirement into coaching the national team in Russia, working alongside her personal coach and Irina Viner. Get ready for this breakdown interview. This is really interesting because we don't really hear much about Evgenia Kanaeva. To start this off, Evgenia Kanaeva worked closely with her personal coach, Vera Efremovna. And this coach was really famous. She had 2 other gymnasts that she was training and had a whole academy separate to Irina Viner. At that time, Irina Viner was in her blooming stage. She had Alina Kabaeva, she had other rhythmic gymnasts, so her stardom was rising and she was really becoming more established. And Evgenia is so grateful for Vera because the coach and the student relationship bonded into more of a mother and a child. The majority of her life was spent with Vera, and the closeness, the bondness that they have is so close. It's very much a family. Evgenia said that her grandma brought her to rhythmic gymnastics. Her mum was a rhythmic gymnast, but she found it very difficult. Rhythmic gymnastics was not very easy for her, and she knew that rhythmic gymnastics is very hard. So she didn't want her daughter doing anything with rhythmic gymnastics because maybe the genes will be passed down and she will find it very difficult. But the grandma really insisted on doing rhythmic gymnastics because she was a really big fan of figure skating and of rhythmic gymnastics. And she was really stubborn as well and was like, no, Evgenia, doesn't matter if she doesn't have the genes, if her back was crooked, if she doesn't have good feet, she will do rhythmic gymnastics. And boy, did she do that.
И Вера Ефремовна — это для меня очень родной человек, очень близкий. И со мной она очень многое прошла. И все бывало, и обиды бывали, и слезы бывали. Но как бы очень много прошли вместе.
Бабушка привела тебя в гимнастику.
Да.
И чего? Ты сказала, супер, это мой вид спорта, я стану олимпийской чемпионкой. Вот этот путь, как тебя влюбили в гимнастику? Потому что понимаем, что без этого, наверное, ты бы не добилась тех сумасшедших высот.
У меня мама занималась художественной гимнастикой. Бабушка у меня фанат художественной гимнастики, фигурного катания на тот момент была. Мама была против, чтобы я пошла в художественную гимнастику, потому что у нее были жесткие связки, и давалось очень сложно, хотя была хорошая координация и очень красивая фигура, она у меня красавица. Но бабушка все равно решилась, ее не спросила, отвела меня на гимнастику. Мы встретили знакомых по пути в секцию. Бабушка так с гордостью говорит, все, пошли на гимнастику. На бабушку так посмотрели, вы уверены? Потому что я была очень косолапая. У меня личико было пухленькое, тельце было худенькое, но очень косолапая была. Вот бабушка говорит, мы ножки пойдем исправлять. Вот так и исправляли.
Сколько лет исправляли ножки?
Получается, сколько, 15.
As predicted by the mother, Evgenia did try out for rhythmic gymnastics, and they told her that she didn't have the correct body, that she didn't have good feet, etc. They basically criticized her all over. But the grandma still insisted, putting her to rhythmic gymnastics, and she was training in a much weaker group, which was usually in the evenings. They were more of a recreational group, not much of the stronger. It didn't take long for the grandma to bring Evgenia to a much stronger group because they trained in the mornings. And so Evgenia was brought into the mornings to train with the stronger group by the grandma. And Vera, which was the head coach of the academy, was like, no, your group is in the evening. But the grandma was like, no, we came in the morning, 7:30, she's going to stay in this group. And so she stayed training there. And once a couple weeks of training there, of the group, she stayed in that stronger group because she was able to keep up and she picked things up.
Тренировалась в слабой группе, потому что я пришла, чуть позже набора моего возраста, И случайно бабушка меня привела как-то утром, потому что моя группа тренировалась всегда вечером. Я переболела там 2 недели, и как-то бабушка почему-то привела меня утром. И Вера прямо так подходит, говорит: а зачем вы утром пришли? Ваша группа вечером. Ну, моя бабушка с характером. Ну, мы тогда вообще ходить не будем. Вот, бабушка.
Сейчас плохого учишь.
Но это просто такое стечение обстоятельств. Она так, ну, конечно, не таким тоном, она более как-то, да, но дала понять,
что разбежно, пожалуйста, тренируйте.
Ну, Вера прям говорит: ну ладно, раз пришли в 7 утра, там, в 7:30, говорит: хорошо, идите на разминку. Я пошла на разминку, там была девочка одна моего возраста, остальные были чуть постарше. Пара тренировок так прошло, и она меня оставила уже вот в этой группе, где девочки были посильнее, скажем так.
То есть уже в 6 лет Вера Ефремовна положила на тебя
это
так
где-то
было?
в 7 где-то было, вот. Но как положила? Вера Ефремовна, она такой тренер, который видит сразу на первом плане трудолюбие. Она видит, как ребенок думает, как соображает, как хватает информацию.
И в 7 лет было уже заметно по тебе?
Ну, как она говорит, да. И очень многие подходили, кто говорили: ну, зачем вы ее тренируете? Ну, обычная девочка, вон красавица стоит рядом с вами, там, вот, которая у вас там, скажем, стажируется. Больше уделяете вроде как ей внимания. Ей, конечно, это постоянно говорят.
That time, Vera Efremina had already rising stars such as Irina Chashina that she was working with, popular gymnasts that got second in the Olympics. And so that kind of also gave Evgenia more motivations because people were admiring Irina Chashina when she was working and she loved the elements that she was performing. And it forced her to work even harder in order to be like her. Ultimately, she stayed training in Vera's academy and kind of grew her status a bit more, started working harder, seeing more results. And Vera really believed in her because she loved working hard rhythmic gymnasts. She really wanted them to be focused. She didn't care if Evgenia didn't have the good feet or the natural flexibility, but as long as she worked hard, that's what she admired. And so for these training camps, Irina Chashina would go to her senior camps and Vera was able to pick another gymnast to go with her as a second one, and Evgenia was one of them. And so she just started training. Those camps were kind of 5:30, 6 maybe a.m. started and finished very late. But because she wasn't the first choice, her trainings were kind of scheduled around Irina Chashina's free period. So whenever Irina Chashina was taking a break, or she was having lunch or a toilet break, those moments that the carpet was free is where Evgenia Kanaeva started training. And she would train in the free periods that Irina Chashina had, because Irina Chashina was ultimately more superior than Evgenia. She needed the time. She was doing world championships, European championships, and working, of course, towards the Olympics.
В Олимпийской деревне, по-моему, 7:30 приходила, в 8 начинала, и в 9 у них хореография. Должна была быстро успеть размяться, сделать хотя бы 2-1 вид. Вот. После хореографии, пока девочки старшие приходят в себя, я должна была сразу бежать, брать вид, вставать,
пока
быстро делать. Да, пока кто в туалет сходит, умоется и так далее. Все. Получается, что после того, как я успевала какой-то вид сделать после хореографии, мне давали задания. Я смотрела на девочек, конечно, училась, и плюс делала свои задания. После того, как они меняли какой-то вид или какая-то пауза: Женя, сюда! И начиналось опять: быстрее, 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 мы не успеем. И вот это вот все время на протяжении всей карьеры было, ну, наверное, лет до 19. Женя, быстрее, 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 пока пустая площадка.
But Evgenia never felt spoiled by the time or not having as much attention on her, because she ultimately understood that it's not her time right now. She's far too young, and of course the attention needs to be more on Irina Chashina. The trainings were really hard. This was her first major competition as a junior, and she became 26th in the Russian national. But this was ultimately a success for her because she made it to the national team as a reserve. And it taught her a valuable lesson that she needs to ultimately work harder if she wanted to see more results. And that is one of her biggest secrets, that she said that she was always focused on working harder than everybody else. She also is very harsh on herself, very self-critical, and can physically harm herself at times. Because she's really harsh, she has high expectations of herself, she's able to humiliate herself, basically in constant unhappy state. She was never happy with her performances. In every performance that she sees some sort of mistake that she knows she could have done better. Although she says she doesn't really see herself outside of her persona, she might be deemed as strict or might not be, but she always tries to reserve her emotions, but again, very self-critical of all her students, knows every mistake, and always wants to tell the truth. And so these competitions were going past, and again, Evgenia never really showed promising results. She would always end up 23rd, 24th, 26th. And at that point, the individual program had a lot of competitors. And at that age as well of Evgenia's, there were beautiful, promising children with lovely technique, with gorgeous lines, flexibility, and didn't require as much hard work as Evgenia had to do. The kids were so promising that Vera started doubting Evgenia and said maybe you need to not go into the individual program and maybe go into groups that might work out for you. But Evgenia just wanted to be in this individual program, and it forced her to work even harder in order to prove herself and also to prove to her coaches she can do it and she needs to have self-belief.
Когда ты была маленькая, еще ничего не выигрывала, ни первых там кубков мира и так далее. Вот как она, Ира чаще пока отдыхала, а она с тобой, ты работала, и получается Вера Ефремовна всегда работала. Единственное, что ее подпитывало, это абсолютная вера в тебя.
Был период такой сложный, когда мне было 15-16 лет, когда Вера Ефремовна видела, что очень много девочек перспективных, красивых, с более, наверное, лучшим внешним видом, со стопами, как бы такие, перспективные дети, очень красивые были. И была Ира Каменева,
сразу
была Саша Соловьева, была, там было очень много народу, очень прекрасные дети, правда, классные девочки. Вот. И Вера Ефремовна какое-то время предлагала мне и разговаривала со мной о том, чтобы пойти в групповое. Был 6-й, 7-й, да, вот 5-й, 6-й, 7-й. Она видела, что сложно будет, вот, и она предлагала. Тогда я отказалась, не потому что я не люблю групповое, но, наверное, внутренне была уверена, что я должна быть личницей, и вот мне очень этого хотелось.
I guess it did pay off because at 12, 13 years old, she won her first ever major competitions, and her prize was actually a living dog. And there was also another major junior cup called the Yvonne Cup in Japan. And this is where the seniors would perform their Met Gala looks, and this was a major competition for the juniors. She was training alongside Zaya, which at that point was supposed to go to these junior competitions. She was the number one, and then the reserve was Evgenia. But unfortunately, Zaya training, she did injure herself, and then Evgenia was able to go to those competitions. And there's even a photo of the seniors and the junior winner, Evgenia. It's such an iconic photo. Because she won these competitions, she understood a child cannot be put on a high pedestal and say, well, you are a champion now and you don't need to work as hard, or basically foreshadowing that you're going to win all of this because you are this true star. And she does not see this correctly, and same as Vera, because whenever she did win any major competitions, the wins were all right, they were good, but once you're off of that, back to work. And Vera also never chased the win, she never chased the medal. She always says, you've just got to perform your absolute best in the performances. And there was one time where Evgenia was really confident, and she was like, I'm going to be competing against this gymnast that she was always admired. And Vera was like, you're not going to compete with her, you're going to perform alongside her. And getting away from this competitiveness that you see other gymnasts as competition because you're battling with yourself and you see no other competition but yourself.
Когда не ставила такие цели, ты должна выиграть. Вот ни разу я от нее этого не слышала. Ни разу. Наверное, это ее есть секрет. Она учит трудиться. Вот трудиться, а там вот как на воле Божией. Как вот будет, так и будет. Что заслужил, тот получишь. Вот. И поэтому для меня, вот когда я выигрывала старт, я к этому очень спокойно относилась. Конечно, я радовалась, но не до такой степени. Все, вау, класс.
Не, ну, может быть, ты запомнила там медали или
нет, конечно, я запомнила.
Там венок, например, в Японии.
Конечно, в Японии. Первый раз, 13 лет, когда я поехала на Ion Cup. Я отбиралась очень тяжело на этот турнир, потому что тогда... Так звучит моей соперницей, но я никогда не соревновалась с кем-то. Ну, именно вот у меня не было никогда в гимнастике, ой, моя соперница там. Нет, я просто понимала, я сделаю, то я получу, все. Как бы на других девочек я смотрела уже после соревнований, болела, смотрела, училась и так далее. И тогда мы с Зая Мухидиновой отбирались, но все уже знали, что поедет Зая Мухидинова. Ну, тогда мне даже Вера Ефремовна подошла, она после чемпионата мира говорит, я поехала домой, давай, пока. Но ты говорит, продержись, тут контрольный поделай, но ты не едешь, ты знаешь это. Ну, как бы едет Зая Мухидинова, как бы ты уже она понимала это. Мне, конечно, это было очень обидно слышать, потому что я контрольные там какие-то выиграла, там у нас были в Олимпийской деревне, вот там был перед этим турнир какой-то выиграла, но Зая была старше, опытней, статнее, красивее, да, она очень красивая девочка, вот, эмоциональная, но на тот момент, и как бы, к сожалению, она тогда за 2 дня подворачивает ногу, и, получается, я поехала на первый Ion Cup. Вот. Но, слава богу, все с ее ногой было в порядке, она выступила потом через неделю на «Надеждах России», все было хорошо. Вот.
Это как раз детская фотография, по-моему, Алина рядом, и Ира, или кто был из старших?
Да, Алина и Ира были,
Алина и Ира, и ты маленькая?
Да, я помню, для меня такие впечатления были, это клубный чемпионат мира. Раньше для юниорок был это самый крутой турнир. Да, туда попадает всего одна, и вообще очень
сложно.
Какой
он красивый,
да.
Вот мне кажется.
At that point in 2005, as a junior, she was competing 5 apparatuses, and in other competitions, she would do 2 or 3. And in 2017 was the European Championships, where Alina Kabaeva gets injured. Olga was supposed to fly and compete against Alina Kabaeva, but Alina Kabaeva couldn't, and so Evgenia was the reserve and went to these European Championships. She was given to compete the ribbon, which was her first ever major European Championships as a senior, and so she competed that and won her division in the ribbon high score. Everybody was happy, especially Vera. She remembers the time when she did win. Vera was very emotional. Even when she was doing the routine, Vera would do the routine alongside her. Basically, a lot of energy and a lot of time into the training, and you can tell that she really, really cared. Looking back, Evgenia never had this goal that she's going to be the Olympic champion, that she wanted this gold medal. There was no real goal towards that. Every time she competes, she never thinks about the medals, and if she does, that's when she loses the apparatus and she doesn't win. She always tries to focus on the clean performance and tries to do her very best. Also, she never looks at any other athlete that is competing, never looks at them only after her routines. She then can look, watch and support. But also, the scores. She never also looks at any of the scores. When the scores are announced, she always tries to block or cover her ears. She knows that if she gives her maximum, then she will see the results. She doesn't need any scores to determine.
Кубок мира в Карбалесоне. И я радостно говорю Вере Ефремовне, я с Аней Бессоновой буду соревноваться. Она на меня так посмотрела. Не соревноваться, а рядом выступать. Выступала с упражнением с ленты. Вот первый раз мои чемпионаты Европы. Так мне было необычно, потому что, обычно все проще, я выхожу, как-то, тренер там, Вера Ефремовна мне потерла уши, все, иди. А тут первый раз Иринсана выводит, там Евгения Борисовна, наш психолог, Вероника Борисовна меня там красила, наш хореограф. Вот. И все стоят, кто машет. кто там что-то делает. Я смотрю, думаю, что такое происходит. Ну,
Я бы с края быстро бы вышла.
Да, как-то для меня это все было необычно, как-то непонятно. Ну, я начала улыбаться, Ренсан смотрит, такая, думает, что сумасшедшая вынесла.
Of course, when you do win, you have this feeling of finally everything is working out. She also says the backing of all the people that have supported her, including doctors and specialists, because every rhythmic gymnast have their own health problems, that they have their weaker points, and so she's ultimately grateful, and that win is not just her win, but for the whole team and the people that are beside her. She says that her first ever Olympic gold medal was actually unexpected. She wasn't really qualified or hasn't competed in the senior level for a very long time. It was probably 1 or 2 years. Again, the year was very rough because she really thought that she would go to these group exercises because nothing was really working out in the individuals. The coaches did start to not really believe in her that much, and so it did force her to have this kind of self-doubt about her. And she was also jealous of the attention that they were then opposing to because they didn't spend a lot of time with Evgenia, which she then felt a bit of resentment because they were focusing on more of the other promising athletes, and she felt that tension. It also came down to that Vera's husband, which was such a very nice guy. He was a lovely person, always respectful, always honest, very kind, had unexpectedly died. And it was very hard for her coach specifically. And Evgenia tried doing anything, being easy with trainings, working super hard and showing really much results. And when she did win, it lifted off the shoulders from Vera, and it kind of made her day.
Выигрывала, да, конечно, мне это было приятно. И, конечно, я понимала, что это труд не только мой, а всей командой, и всеми, и врачами, потому что было очень тяжело. Мне и спина болела. Это как бы как у каждого спортсмена какие-то свои есть по здоровью проблемы. Слабые точки, которые, да. И врачи, и Дима Дунаев вот, мне очень сильно помогал. И очень много как бы врачей и специалистов, которые со мной работали.
Логически, первая медаль или вторая, давай сложнее?
Ну, первая медаль, это такая медаль, все так говорят, неожиданно ворвалась.
Ну вот ответственности, может быть, не было?
Это не было, чтобы это было неожиданно. Я уже 2 года выступала по мастерам, и давалось не так легко, как казалось. И в эти 2 года я чуть не ушла в групповое упражнение, да. И как бы бывали такие вещи, что думаешь, что тебя уже тренер не верит, потому что там больше где-то внимания и на молодую, более перспективную. Где-то...
Ревновала Вера Ефремовна? Давай признание чистосердечное.
Конечно, ревновала.
Evgenia, her hardest apparatus is the clubs. She says she doesn't know, it's just so difficult every time she comes. Maybe because there's 2 of them, but it's just difficult, and her favorite apparatus is the ribbon. And so that Olympic win, the first one, was a very emotional roller coaster. It felt like everything that was put against her finally worked out. And so this medal really showed that she deserved to be in rhythmic gymnastics, that she's worthy of being the best. The second Olympics was very difficult as well, in a different way. Her teammate Olga had dropped her apparatus in the finals and was literally pale. And they were really close friends. They shared dormitory together. And Evgenia really felt bad and worried for Olga that she wouldn't be able to compete and show her best, because she knows the feeling when you work all your way to the Olympics to drop an apparatus. It's just devastating. And it's probably an easy mistake as well. And so Evgenia refused to even train until Olga was fine. Then afterwards, she kind of brought everything together. The first apparatus she dropped in her routine, and then Vera felt calm. She was like, yep, this is what happened to the last Olympics, then it's fine, it's on a good road, because that's what happened in the last Olympics, and she won the gold.
Такое ощущение, что я не на Олимпиаде нахожусь, и в тот момент я переживала очень за Олю, потому что она была настолько бледная, настолько я понимала, как это... Ну, это правда ужасно. Когда ты готовишься к старту, к единственному вообще в жизни, и попадают всего 2 гимнастки от всей страны, Я представляю, что она пережила. Это даже представить сложно, но это правда.
Причем нелепо, это тоже такое.
Это такие, она это все делала,
Конечно,
чисто всегда, и собирала, и все готовились, и все это как-то было нормой, что она сделает благо. Вот. И зашла Вера Николаевна Шаталина тогда, и был такой момент, всплеск эмоций. Я тогда не сдержалась, убежала уже, заплакала и сказала, помню, Вере Ефремовне, пока Оля не сделает, я не буду работать. Мне было за нее тогда больно очень, потому что, я до сих пор этот момент, я помню эту раздевалку, может, потому что тогда настолько было все тонко,
и чувствовалось
острее, да. Эту Олимпиаду я помню немножко, конечно, для меня это было все здорово, выиграла, никого не подвела, да, там, но это тоже ошибки могут с каждым случиться.
So those two medals completely felt different at different times, and both emotionally. There were very different emotions, but again, very sharp, vivid memories. Year on year, when she was training for the second Olympics, she almost quit because she really just found it really hard. And Vera kept reminding, of course, you came to the first Olympics unexpectedly, basically trying to anger her up and saying that she didn't really deserve to be in those first Olympics, and that the second Olympics was supposed to be her moment where she trained as a senior. But again, Evgenia always had this in the back of her head that she was always the worst gymnast, that everybody else was better than her because of all these promising, all the critiques that she was given as a child, that she wasn't as good as the rest of them over there. And it kind of sank into her and she had this mental block. But she really then started enjoying rhythmic gymnastics when she hit her 20s. And she didn't have to be forced doing training. She wanted to. She was like, I want to do more training. And she loved what she was doing and she felt this enjoyment. But because she was a late bloomer, she really started gaining weight in her 20s because the puberty was postponed when she was younger and it only started really coming out in her 20s. She was gaining weight and the weight was unnecessary because when you compare her to the other athletes that she was competing during the Olympic season, they were very skinny because they were 16 years old. They weighed very less. And so Evgenia had to buckle down and eat very little food. She would have like 2 spoonfuls of cottage cheese and then have a small lunch and then eat nothing for dinner. And that way she lost about 7 kilograms and weighed exactly how she weighed in the last Olympics, the first Olympics, around 50 kilograms. At least then she was at peak form.
Каждый год после первых Олимпийских игр я все время заканчивала. Это была постановка. И у меня что-то не шло, нервы.
Ты, наверное, в этот момент уже стала такой гимнасткой, которая привыкла работать на площадке одной, да?
Мне уже позволялось много.
Уже олимпийская чемпионка, ты в Новогорск ходила.
Нет, я пыталась так себя не вести, потому что знала, если я только корону одену, это все быстренько уплывет от меня. Это был тяжелый период, и я понимала для себя, что нужно постоянно каждый год чем-то удивлять. И каждый год надо было идти на какие-то интересные, сложные вещи. Не будешь рисковать, не будешь интересен зрителям, тем же судьям. Намекнула, что мне надо заканчивать. Все, я больше не могу. Я была очень эмоциональна. Вера Ефремовна говорит, да, случайно попала на Олимпийские игры, выиграла, и все, теперь делать ничего не хочешь. Вот после 20 я особенно почувствовала, как это получать, и я сама себя заставляла уже работать, и иногда говорила, Вера Ефремовна, надо еще сделать, и Ренсана подходила, хватит уже, хватит, чтобы тоже и здоровья, и всего хватило. Она меня вот особенно перед второй Олимпиадой, она меня останавливала, она подходила, она, все, хватит, я говорю, еще, пойдемте делать, потому что я понимала, что это мой последний сбор.
Ты сейчас понимаешь, что ты сотворила историю, что 2 олимпийских золота в индивидуальной программе – это почти нереально повторить по новым правилам?
Да по любым правилам это сложно сделать.
Нет.
Плюс мне был такой период, когда я в 2011 году, у меня, скажем, такое позднее физическое развитие было, у меня пошел вес в 21 год. У всех в 16, у меня в 21. Вот. Все запоздало.
Вовремя?
Да, вовремя. И как раз перед второй Олимпиадой, когда ты идешь уже столько лет, да, это очень вовремя. И вот близкая моя подруга, самая близкая, Динара Гиматова, и вот Юля Царева тоже, вот подружка, которые меня позвали в ресторан, сказали: ты жирная.
And ultimately, she says she didn't mind losing all of that and restricting herself because her diet was already anyway poor, and people like to look at a pretty picture. When looking back, she doesn't want to see herself being fat in a picture. She wants to see a skinny person winning the Olympics and being aesthetically pleasing. After the Olympics, she kind of knew already that this was going to be her last appearance being in rhythmic gymnastics. She basically wanted to end it on a positive note, and this was kind of a beautiful way to finish off her career. But Vera again was trying to persuade her not to quit, because she was like, you've only started to enjoy rhythmic gymnastics, you've only started really enjoying the training and the whole process, and because you've obviously built this contact with a coach for all these years, emotions up and down, and been through rough times together, it's very emotionally difficult to detach yourself from that. So she said it was mentally difficult after winning the Olympics and not training anymore and not being in this strict, rigid scheme that she was used to. It felt very empty. But when she did retire, she started going into coaching and working alongside her coach. And so they're still working together somehow and alongside Irina Wiener. So I guess this whole moment really circled back, and she's still somehow involved in rhythmic gymnastics and helping her students now. She says she was super lucky that she was surrounded by good people, her grandma, the coaches around her, her mum that was supporting her as well. Everybody was supporting her very much, and she said that these wins that she had is not just her wins, but everybody around her that contributed to her success. I really hope you guys enjoyed this interview breakdown. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe, comment down below, and I will see you in my next video. Mwah.